What I'm about to tell you about your breakfast is going to completely change the way you think about blood sugar because the food causing the biggest morning spike in millions of adults is often the one marketed as healthy. And I want you to stay with me because the number one worst food for your blood sugar is something many people eat every single morning without the slightest idea what it's doing inside their body. If you're over 40, if you've noticed stubborn belly fat, more cravings, more fatigue after meals, brain fog in the afternoon, or your blood sugar is starting to creep up even though you think you eat pretty well, this is for you. Now here's the thing. Blood sugar problems rarely start with a dramatic symptom. They start quietly. You wake up tired, you need coffee just to feel normal. You get hungry again an hour or two after breakfast. You feel shaky, irritable, or unfocused if you go too long without eating. Your waistline gets thicker even though you're not eating huge meals. Your triglycerides start going up. Your A1C edges higher. Maybe your doctor tells you to watch it. Maybe they say it's still normal. Maybe they say just cut calories and exercise more. But deep down, you know something is off. And you're right. According to the CDC, more than 115 million American adults have prediabetes, and 8 out of 10 of them don't even know it. Think about that. Millions of people are walking around with blood sugar dysfunction right now, and it's silent, no alarm. No pain, no obvious warning sign, but the damage is happening anyway. Your nerves are affected, your blood vessels are affected, your liver is affected, your pancreas is affected, your brain is affected, and by the time it shows up as full-blown type 2 diabetes, this process has often been going on for years. In fact, an NCBI clinical review notes that insulin resistance can precede type 2 diabetes by 10 to 15 years. That is a long time to be walking around with a metabolic problem you don't even know you have. And this is where so many people get frustrated. You try to do the right thing. You eat what you were told was a healthy breakfast. You avoid bacon. You avoid butter. You reach for cereal, toast, granola, fruit juice, instant oatmeal, maybe a muffin, maybe low-fat yogurt with some honey, and you think you're being disciplined. Then 2 hours later, you're hungry again, your energy drops, and you want another snack. So you blame your willpower, but it's not your willpower. It's the physiology. It's the hormonal response. It's the way that food is interacting with your insulin, your liver, your cortisol, and your cells. And this is critical because if you misunderstand the morning meal, you can spend the rest of the day trying to recover from the damage it created in the first place. For decades, you've been told that breakfast should be built around grains, whole grains, heart-healthy grains, fortified grains, high-fiber grains. You've been told breakfast is the most important meal of the day, so you need a quick source of energy, maybe cereal, maybe toast, maybe orange juice, maybe a healthy breakfast bar, maybe oatmeal from a packet that's basically dessert in disguise. Your doctor may have told you to eat smaller meals more often. You may even have been told to avoid fat and focus on bland, carb-heavy foods in the morning. But here's the problem. That advice completely ignores how blood sugar actually behaves in the body, especially in someone who is already becoming insulin resistant. Harvard's nutrition source is very clear on this. High glycemic foods create powerful spikes in blood sugar, and those spikes are linked to a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and overweight. Harvard Health also points out that refined carbohydrates tend to cause sharp spikes in blood sugar and can boost triglycerides. Mayo Clinic goes even further and specifically advises people to eat fewer refined, highly processed carbohydrates, including sugary cereal. So the idea that a bowl of refined grains with sugar on top is a great way to start the day is not just outdated. For many people, it's metabolically destructive. And the newer science keeps pointing in the same direction. A 2024 umbrella review in the BMJ found convincing evidence that greater exposure to ultra-processed foods is directly associated with a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. Now think about what many breakfast foods are. They're not really food in the traditional sense. They're industrially processed mixtures of refined grain flour, sugar, flavorings, colorings, seed oils, additives, and synthetic vitamins sprayed back on at the end so the box can call it fortified. It looks healthy, it sounds healthy, it may even have words like whole grain, multigrain, or heart healthy on the front. But once you understand what it does to insulin and blood sugar, you see it very differently. Let me explain what's actually happening in your body. Think of insulin like a key. Its job is to open the door of the cell and allow glucose to get in so it can be used as fuel. That's normal. That's healthy. But when you start your morning with a flood of fast digesting carbohydrate, especially refined starch plus sugar, your blood glucose rises quickly. Your pancreas sees that and releases insulin. If your cells are still sensitive, some of that glucose gets handled pretty efficiently. But if you're even a little insulin resistant, which many adults over 40 are, your cells don't respond the way they should. So the pancreas has to release more insulin and more and more. Now you've got two problems. Your glucose goes up too high and your insulin goes up too high. Then, because insulin is powerful, your blood sugar can come down too fast. That's when you get the crash. You feel hungry again. You want something sweet, you feel tired, you lose focus, you need more caffeine, and the cycle repeats. This is why so many people can eat breakfast at 8 o'clock and be prowling around the kitchen by 10 o'clock. It's not because breakfast gave them energy, it's because breakfast created a blood sugar roller coaster. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. In the morning, your body naturally has a higher level of cortisol. That's part of your circadian rhythm. Cortisol helps wake you up, but it also raises blood sugar. So if you already have a little morning glucose elevation from the dawn phenomenon, and then you pour refined carbohydrate on top of that, you get a much bigger spike than you realize. In other words, the same breakfast that seems harmless on paper can be far more damaging at 7:30 in the morning than you think, especially if you're sedentary, stressed, sleep deprived, or already carrying visceral fat around the middle. And I want you to understand this next point because this is the missing piece for so many people. Blood sugar is not the whole story. Insulin is the hidden story. You can have a fasting glucose that still looks okay while your insulin is already elevated. That means your body is working harder and harder to keep the glucose in range. That is like revving your car engine harder just to keep the speed the same because something under the hood is failing. It may not show up on the dashboard yet, but the strain is there. This is why fasting insulin and a calculated HOMA-IR can be so helpful for seeing a problem earlier before glucose and A1C become dramatically abnormal. When insulin stays chronically high, it does more than just control sugar. It locks fat in storage, it stimulates your liver to make more fat, it can drive triglycerides up, it affects your appetite, it influences inflammation, it can worsen fatty liver, and this is why you can feel like you're doing everything right and still not lose weight. If insulin stays elevated, fat burning is suppressed. That's the hormonal trap. Now let's talk about the food matrix, because this is what most people don't realize. A carbohydrate is not just a carbohydrate. How processed it is matters. Particle size matters. Fiber content matters. Whether it's liquid matters. Whether it's eaten alone or with protein matters. Whether it's intact or pulverized matters. If you take a grain and leave it relatively intact, digestion is slower. If you shred it, puff it, flake it, extrude it, grind it into fine flour, add sugar, then eat it with low-fat milk and wash it down with juice, you've just created the perfect setup for a rapid glycemic response. It's fast in, fast up, and then often fast down. The body barely has to do any work to break it apart. That's why texture can be deceptive. Crunchy does not mean slow digesting. Multigrain does not mean blood sugar friendly. Fortified does not mean metabolically safe. A breakfast food can be enriched with vitamins and still be a disaster for glucose control. Research on glycemic responses has shown this over and over. The blood sugar effect of a meal is heavily influenced by the speed of digestion and absorption, not by the marketing on the label. And there's another layer. Many of these breakfast foods are low in protein and low in natural fat. That matters because protein and fat slow gastric emptying and can soften the glucose response. A 2024 meta-analysis in the Journal of Nutrition found that adding dairy or plant protein to a carbohydrate-containing meal significantly reduced postprandial glucose exposure. In plain English, when you combine carbs with meaningful protein, you blunt the spike. But when breakfast is mostly refined carbohydrate with very little protein, the spike is often much worse. So if your breakfast is cereal, toast, fruit juice, a banana, or a muffin, you are essentially pouring glucose into the bloodstream without the brakes. And because many people repeat this every morning, year after year, they create a daily hormonal pattern of spiking insulin, crashing energy, and reinforcing insulin resistance. This one thing alone can change everything in how you understand morning metabolism. Let's go even deeper. What happens when insulin is repeatedly high? First, the cells become less responsive, so you need more insulin for the same job. Second, the liver starts converting excess glucose into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. That contributes to fatty liver, which makes blood sugar control even worse. Third, high insulin suppresses lipolysis, meaning your body has a harder time accessing stored fat. Fourth, frequent glucose swings can increase oxidative stress and inflammation. Over time, you can see this show up in biomarkers like rising triglycerides, lower HDL, elevated fasting insulin, rising A1C, elevated CRP, and sometimes elevated liver enzymes like GGT. And because the brain is very sensitive to glucose fluctuations, you may also notice more mood swings, irritability, or difficulty concentrating. That's why a blood sugar problem doesn't just stay in one lane. It affects energy, weight, cravings, inflammation, sleep quality, cardiovascular risk, and even how old you feel. Another thing people miss is satiety. Refined breakfast foods often don't satisfy you for very long. They're calorie dense, but they're not signaling rich. They don't tell your brain, we're nourished, we're good, you can relax. So you eat them, but you're still hungry. Then you snack, then you graze, then your pancreas never really gets a break. That constant feeding pattern, especially when it's based on refined carbs, keeps insulin elevated across the day. And this is exactly why some people say, I'm not even eating that much, but my blood sugar is getting worse. It's not just how much, it's what, it's when. It's how often, it's the hormonal context. So what do you do about it? Let me give you a practical framework. The first thing you need to do is remove the obvious morning glucose bombs. That means sugary cereal marketed as healthy, but based on refined grains, toast made from white or refined flour bread, pastries, muffins, sweetened yogurt, instant oatmeal packets loaded with sugar, pancakes, waffles, and fruit juice. And yes, even many so-called whole grain breakfast foods can still hit your blood sugar hard if they're highly processed. I'm not saying every carbohydrate is evil. I'm saying the morning combination of refined starch plus sugar plus low protein is one of the worst setups for your metabolism. If you want stable energy, lower cravings, and better blood sugar, you have to stop starting the day with food that behaves like dessert. The second thing is just as important. Replace that breakfast with something built around protein, natural fat, and micronutrients. Eggs, plain Greek yogurt if you tolerate dairy, cottage cheese, leftover salmon, sardines, avocado, chia pudding without added sugar, unsweetened nuts, a vegetable omelet. Even dinner leftovers can be a far better breakfast than cereal. Why does this work? Because protein is more satiating, it supports muscle, and it slows the blood sugar response. Natural fats help you stay full longer. Fiber from vegetables, seeds, or berries slows absorption and supports the gut. This kind of breakfast doesn't create the same insulin surge, so you don't get the same mid-morning crash. If you absolutely want carbs in the morning, make them intact and lower glycemic and pair them with protein. For example, real steel-cut oats are very different from sweetened instant oatmeal. But even then, pay attention to how your body responds. If you get hungry fast, shaky, or sleepy, that breakfast is not working for you. The third step, and this is the one almost everyone skips, is to create a break between meals. Stop snacking all day long. Give insulin time to come down. The science on this is very clear. A recent review in Cell Metabolism reported that in time-restricted eating studies using shorter eating windows, insulin resistance was reduced by roughly 12 to 29% compared with controls. That doesn't mean you need to do anything extreme. It means you need to stop constantly triggering insulin. If breakfast makes you hungrier, not more satisfied, it sets you up to graze. A better breakfast, or in some cases delaying breakfast until you're truly hungry, can help restore flexibility. Now, if you're on glucose-lowering medication or you have a medical condition, you need to work with your clinician. But for many people, simply cutting out the high-carb breakfast and shortening the eating window a little can make a dramatic difference. The fourth step is movement, especially after meals. You don't need an intense workout. You don't need to punish yourself. You just need to use your muscles. UCLA Health highlighted research showing that even a 5-minute walk after eating had a measurable effect on moderating blood sugar, especially in that 60 to 90-minute window after the meal. Why? Because active muscle can pull glucose out of the bloodstream. It acts like a sink. It improves insulin sensitivity. It gives the glucose somewhere to go other than circulating in your blood. So after breakfast, instead of sitting immediately, walk. Even around the house, even up and down the driveway, even on the phone. This is simple, but it works. The 5th step is to fix the nutrient side of the equation. Blood sugar regulation is not just about carbs. It's also about whether your body has the raw materials it needs for insulin signaling. Magnesium is a big one. It's involved in hundreds of enzymatic reactions, including those tied to glucose metabolism. Low magnesium is common, especially in people who eat a lot of processed food, are under chronic stress, or have poor sleep. There are randomized trials showing magnesium can improve insulin resistance in certain insulin-resistant groups. So focus on magnesium-rich foods like leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, almonds, and if appropriate for you, discuss a quality magnesium supplement with your healthcare professional. Vitamin D status matters too. Sleep matters. Potassium-rich vegetables matter. A diet based on real food gives your body a much better biochemical environment for handling glucose than a diet built around fortified boxes and quick convenience foods. The 6th step is testing. Don't just look at fasting glucose and assume you're fine. If you want a more complete picture, ask your clinician about fasting insulin, fasting glucose, A1C, triglycerides, HDL, liver enzymes, and, if appropriate, a HOMA-IR calculation. The reason this matters is simple. Glucose can stay in range while insulin is climbing. And if you only look at glucose, you can miss the early stage of the problem. You want to catch the fire when it's still smoke, not when the kitchen is already burning down. The 7th step is sleep. This is going to surprise you, but poor sleep can make the exact same breakfast affect you more badly the next day. If you sleep 5 hours, you are simply more insulin resistant the next morning. A 2024 JAMA Network open study linked short sleep duration with a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So if you are trying to improve blood sugar while sleeping poorly, eating cereal for breakfast, and snacking through the day, you are fighting an uphill battle. Fix the sleep and you improve the hormonal terrain. Get morning light, keep a consistent sleep schedule, avoid eating too late, and protect your sleep like it's medicine, because metabolically it is. Now, before I reveal the #1 worst breakfast food, let me make one thing very clear. The goal is not perfection. The goal is understanding. Once you understand what drives the spike, you stop being manipulated by labels. You stop trusting the front of the box. You stop thinking healthy means low fat, fortified, or made with grains. You start asking better questions. How much protein is in this meal? How processed is it? How quickly will it digest? Will this keep me full? Will this make me hungry again in 2 hours? Will this help lower insulin, or will it force my pancreas to work overtime? Those are the questions that change your health. And now I want to pay off the promise I made at the beginning. The #1 worst food for your blood sugar that you're probably eating in the morning is breakfast cereal, especially the cold boxed kind made from refined grains and added sugar and marketed as healthy. Not real food, not intact grain, not a simple bowl of unsweetened steel-cut oats. I'm talking about flakes, puffs, clusters, loops, crisps, granola that's basically candy, and those so-called heart-healthy cereals that still hit your bloodstream like a glucose grenade. Why is cereal the worst? Because it combines almost every metabolic problem in one bowl. It's highly processed. It's usually low in protein. It's often low in real fiber, despite what the label suggests. It's easy to overeat. It's frequently paired with milk, which adds more carbohydrate, and juice or fruit on the side, which adds even more sugar. It's fast to digest, so it spikes glucose quickly. It causes a strong insulin response. It often leaves you hungry soon after. And because it's socially accepted as a normal breakfast, people eat it every day for years without ever questioning it. That's what makes it so dangerous. It's not just the food, it's the frequency, it's the repetition, it's the fact that it's normalized. If you change just this one habit, for a lot of people, the difference is dramatic. Better satiety, fewer cravings, better energy, lower post-meal glucose, easier fat loss, better morning focus, and sometimes within weeks, better readings on fasting glucose and A1C. If you only remember one thing from this video, let it be this. The The worst breakfast for your blood sugar is the one that looks healthy on the box, but behaves like sugar in your bloodstream. Stop trusting the marketing. Start paying attention to the biology. If this helped you, share it with someone you care about, because there's a very good chance they're eating this every morning and wondering why their energy, weight, and blood sugar keep getting worse. And if you want to go deeper, watch the next video on the best breakfast for insulin resistance, because knowing what to remove is only half the solution. Your body has an incredible ability to repair, regulate, and heal when you give it the right inputs and remove the wrong ones. Start with breakfast, and you may be shocked at how much the rest of your day begins to change. I'll see you in the next video.